Good afternoon. Welcome back. The Holy Eucharist, one of the most mysterious and amazing doctrines and, well, mysteries that we have in our faith. You could look at it from many different angles. You could see it in the light of apologetics. You can see it as the great stumbling block, sadly, for a lot of people, and how it's a very easy way to show that so many churches that are called Christian are not really Christ's church. You can see it from the perspective of Christ's love for us. What I want to do today is talk about it in the light of something that I think is kind of interesting. So, the Holy Eucharist, in the light of, or seen as connected to motherhood. And I think there's something here. I'm not a theologian, and what I say here might be completely wrong. And if it is, then you can just completely disregard what I say and shut off the video. Nevertheless, I think there's something here, and if you find it interesting, you can keep listening. So, I want to start by looking at the question of creation. So, in the last video, I kind of alluded to this a little bit. This idea that when God created, he put himself everywhere. Not himself literally, but reflections of himself. And so, no matter what you look at, you can find something that reminds you of God. So, if you look at the ocean, which is a very Floridian example, you look at the ocean, and if you look long enough, you'll realize that, hey, the ocean just keeps going and going and going and going. It never seems to end. And so that can give us a little bit of an idea of God's infinity, his boundlessness, and the fact that the waves just keep coming no matter what, just never ends. It can give you an idea of God's eternity. Okay, so just one example of that. You can take anything, you can take the grass, and you can find something that reminds you of God. Now, those are reflections of God, but in a very limited way. But things kind of get more dramatic and interesting when we start to look at his rational creatures. So there's the angels, and there's humanity, there's man. So when it comes to man, the difference here compared to just all the other material creation is, as we know, God made us in his own image and likeness. And that's a lot more than just being a simple bare bones reflection of something from him. And so, but it's interesting here. It's not the same as with the angels. The angels are they're just pure spirit. And yes, they are distinct from each other in a very real way. In fact, it's a very significant way. But nevertheless, it's all same basic idea. They're spirits. With man, with humanity, God did this amazing thing where he made two genders. He made male and female. And both reflect God. Both are made in God's image and likeness. But they're different. They're quite different. They're not two separate species, but they are quite different. And if God is making them both in his image and likeness, and he's making them a reflection of himself, this distinction between them, they're still the same type of being, same type of creature, but they're different. It seems almost as if, and this might not be theologically or philosophically accurate, but I'll run with it a little bit, God seems to have taken himself, who's perfectly simple. He can't be divided up into parts or compartmentalized, and his this characteristic, that he's one, simple. But it's almost as if he he took himself and he put roughly half of that in man, and then the other half in woman. And of course, there's going to be some intermingling. We say men are more logical, women are more emotional, but both can be emotional, both can be logical. But nevertheless, there's still, men tend to be this, women tend to be this. So it seems as if God kind of split it in half and put half over here in men, and then half in the woman, which is kind of interesting. And now what's going to be important for us to think about when it comes to this whole question I'm getting to with the Holy Eucharist is God doesn't have a gender. God is a spirit. God's not a man. He's not he is a man. But before he became incarnate, God was not a man. He was not a female. He was simply a spirit. But he put some characteristics in man, some in woman. And so even though God is Father, so God is Father, the Son is Son. And so we're going to see that it was perfectly fitting that God, if he becomes a human, it made sense that he'd become a man. But nevertheless, God being the whole, you can say, and man and woman being reflections, half and half, of what God is, if that's true, then we would see in the Old Testament, let's say, that God expresses himself to his chosen people and to others with both characteristics. So for example, he does show typically male characteristics. So his justice is very prevalent, it's very clear. His authority, his demand to be respected and to be obeyed. Creator, so like Father, actually Father. So those are all very male characteristics, but at the same time, he expresses some of those feminine characteristics as well. So anytime that he is overly merciful, expressing his love for his chosen people, yes, obviously men love as well, but that's more of a feminine characteristic, that compassion, that mercy that he shows in the Old Testament when he's always pleading for his people. And there's even there's probably more than just one, but there's the one example when he says, can a mother forget her infant, the child of her womb? Can she do that? And then he compares himself to that, and he says, but even if she does forget, I won't forget the child of my womb, so to speak. And so he compares himself to a mother. And in the New Testament, our Lord himself, who's a man, he nevertheless compares himself to a mother hen when he weeps over Jerusalem. It's a real comparison. That's a real thing. So just to recap, when God created human beings, man and woman, in a sense, half of who he is in his nature expressed through man, and then the other half expressed through woman. But going back to God is the whole. He's not just expressing male characteristics or just female characteristics. He expresses both together perfectly. So, moving on now to when God becomes man, when he becomes human. So God decides to become incarnate. Well, does he become a man or a woman? Now it does seem completely reasonable and fitting, and it is, that he choose to become a man, because he comes to us and he tells us, God the Father, not God the man, but still God the Father, which is reflected in men, in this humanity, in this human race, human species, this human creation, fatherhood expressed through man. And then he is the Son. And so, again, sons are male. So it makes perfect sense when he comes and he tells us, yeah, God the Father, I am God the Son, then obviously he's to become a man. Makes perfect sense. And yet, think about this. As we just said before, God in himself is not, he's not male. He's the whole. And again, the whole is reflected through male and female. And so the question is, when God becomes man, Jesus Christ, he's a man. He's expressing himself naturally as a man. He's the most masculine, manly man who ever existed. But he's not a human person. He's a divine person. And as we said, that divine person is the whole simple, not male or female, but the whole thing, which again is reflected in man and then in woman. And so Jesus Christ, he has, I want to be careful in how I say this because we have a very gender confused world, but we can say that he has maternal heart in him because he's God, and God expresses all of that. And so the question is, since God decided to become a man and not a woman, it's almost as if our Lord is thinking, and I'm slowing it down, like our Lord is thinking, obviously he knew from eternity what he would do, but it's almost as if he's thinking, okay, I'm incarnate as a man, but how can I express that more maternal side of me as God without losing or sacrificing 1 ounce of my perfect masculinity? Can you do that? Remember, he compares himself to a mother hen. He has this maternal instinct as God alongside the paternal instinct. And so what is the most amazing thing that a mother can do? Well, it's obvious. It's to bring about a new life and to nurture it. And so, can our Lord find a way to do that? He does. He gives his flesh and he gives his blood, as a mother does that for her infant in her womb. It's beautiful. It's an extraordinary thing. It kind of brings the passage where he says, unless you become as little children, you'll have no life in you. Seeing Holy Communion in this light, where he says something similar, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man, drink his blood, you'll have no life in you. Unless you become as little children, you won't enter the kingdom of heaven. What does it mean to be little children? It means to be fed, to be nurtured by their mother. So there's this overlap with the Holy Communion. And I would say lastly, with the sacraments, so matrimony, special thanks to my camera battery for dying at the very end. So just to finish this up, one last thing. So the sacraments. So matrimony is the sacrament of husband, wife, father, mother, on the natural level, but supernaturalizing it. What's interesting about matrimony, well, what's interesting about the liturgical part of matrimony is that it has a heavy focus on the bride, which is really beautiful. But at the end of the day, we can probably say that matrimony is more or less equally concerned with father and mother, husband and wife. But there is a completely separate sacrament that is focused entirely on fatherhood, which is holy orders. And it's focused on fatherhood and taking fatherhood and raising it to a supernatural level, a supernatural spiritual level. Which, actually, when you think about it, it's not really raising it to a supernatural level. It's just bringing fatherhood to what it was from eternity, which is supernatural fatherhood. And so, there's a sacrament for fatherhood. Is there a sacrament for motherhood that specifically takes motherhood and raises it to this sublime, supernatural, spiritual level? Well, I think we can say that in a way, the Holy Eucharist is the counterpart to the Holy Orders. Holy Orders is the fatherhood, and Holy Eucharist is the motherhood side of it. That's all I have today. Thank you for watching. And tomorrow being Palm Sunday, I wish you all a very, very holy and happy Holy Week.